energy cost, qualification of labor force, which is very important, science and technology. But all of this, okay, I'll come back to this figure later. But what are the challenges to this strategy? Then this is a figure that have been moved. I think everyone has seen this figure before. As I mentioned before, I was in Europe last week, and I was talking to someone. I said, "Oh, have you seen the figure of Brazil? That if you put retail trade and industrial production, it has this. It's opening up very wide, and this is something that we have been discussing why this happened, and why if this actually." There are some people who say that this figure is not completely correct. You should do not exactly industrial production here. You should put other things in order to take retail trade, open it, look at parts. And if you actually do this, for some of them, we don't have that bad figure as we are looking right here. But still, we have to discuss one thing that I said before, that if you do improve a lot domestic demand, where is it going to? Is it going to stay in the country, at least part of it, or is it going to leakage the whole thing to other countries, especially China, of course, but not only? But then when you look this, I think you also, as I was mentioning before, Brazil had a strategy in order to increase wages, increase income, do an inclusive growth. Okay, good. And actually, the whole world, or mainly the whole world, and I agree that China has been increasing wages, but from a very lower level. So if you took in comparison, it's still much lower. So in some sense, it's not China's, let's say, strategy, but it's from the international, the multinationals. In the 2000s, they used a different strategy to compete, and was mainly to look for lower costs, especially labor costs. So Brazil was going to one sense trying to raise wages, trying to raise labor income, and the rest of the world was going in the opposite direction. And if you, last week, as I mentioned, I was in Europe, and I was with in a table with a person from the ILO. And actually, she was showing the figures from the whole world, how the wage share is going down, and how this in some ways compressing the domestic demand. And in some way, this is could be a global race to the bottom if everyone tries to do this strategy instead of doing the other one. And in some sense, this is leading, and we can discuss this, to a deficient demand. Although I agree that China, already doing some discussions here, I do agree that China has one of the main drivers of domestic demand, especially investment demand, although consumption is also growing, but from a lower share than in other countries. But we do have countries with a lot of, we still have the global imbalances related to surplus countries and indebted countries, which in some sense the surplus countries are in some way not using all their potential demand and not growing their demand as fast as they could have done. So in this sense, when you're trying to reduce wages and trying to reduce costs through wages, then you might be going to a deficient demand scenario in the world. And if you now take Brazilian manufacturing, the blue bars here, and you take the world imports of manufacturing, or U.S. imports, which is very important for Brazil, since to U.S. Brazil exports more manufacturing than to Europe or Asia. But you see, there is a very close correlation. Of course, I didn't go to the correlation, it's just simple correlation looking at the charts. But one of the things that I think it's also in some way helping this deficient demand, or not as fast demand as it could have been doing, it's not only the, let's say, household consumption, which is in some way not growing as fast as it could, but also is the fiscal policy side. And for the last 20 years, maybe, or even more, in macroeconomic policy or macroeconomic theory, it has been downgrading fiscal policy. And with the even much more space and much more using as a better, not better, but a more important instrument than monetary policy instead of fiscal policy. And this, in some sense, is one of the things that's also reducing domestic demand from the public sector as well. Opposite, as I was explaining about Brazil, which was actually in some periods increasing a lot the public sector demand as well. And even though now in the crisis people discussed a little bit about financial fiscal policy, but more depression economics, that until it's only very targeted. And IMF now is discussing the second generation of fiscal policy, more anti-cyclical than the previous one, which is much more a fixed target. Doesn't matter what happens, you keep that fixed target. And now people are discussing a little bit about how you should at least have an anti-cyclical fiscal policy, but it's still very limited to this discussion. Since I only have, I will conclude. So maybe just two quick questions here. One of the things that China is true that China is increasing a lot with its domestic demand, but it's like US in the beginning of when US became the main driver of the world in the 50s, not exactly now, but I mean in the 50s, that was much more competitive to the developing countries than actually in some way it was not as opposed to England, which needed the developing countries, US didn't need the developing countries. So this was not exactly very important for the developing countries. In the beginning it was very hard, and China is more competitor than actually for the developing world. So how exactly this is going to be played in the next few years, I think it's very important. And US recovery as well. Was it going to be now, it's a joke with the natural resources up, is a blessing or a curse in the sense that in some way it's very important to stimulate world economy, I don't have any doubt in that. But the problem is how exactly what is going to happen to interest rates and exchange rates, capital flows, that even though too much capital flows could be a problem if you have a complete, if capital flows just stop, as we have seen in the 80s, it's worse than to have excess capital flows. At least excess capital flows, you can manage it. When this capital flow stops, you cannot do anything. And what's going to happen to commodity prices? And this is the last slide I want to show. Since we have the dollar standard, US have, as we all know, the dollar has a double role as a national currency, as a world currency, but the policy in the US is more national policy, as in any country. So decisions in national policies have an impact on the rest of the world, and there used to be a negative correlation among commodity prices and what happened to the dollar. But the commodity prices had even when they went up, they had the level was not as high as it did the last few years, as we have seen. So now, in some way, is the commodity price in here agriculture, but could put another one, is it more related to the international demand, and especially China and the new income of middle class in the rest of the world, or is it going to go with to follow what happens to the US? So now this is something that still needs to be addressed. And just a few remarks about this is also the final question is related to what we're discussing now. Should we go back to the discussion in Bretton Woods again? Both in terms of the initiative from the creditor countries, which are in a much better position than indebted countries, and also about the discussion of capital flows. So how exactly are we going to address those things? Thank you.